Have you ever wondered what happened to America? How do we get from being a nation that liberated the world from the powers of evil to being a nation enslaved by sexual immorality? What was the turning point? Within 2 decades, we went from being a shining city on a hill to an exporter of darkness to the rest of the world. How did this happen? How do we slide into such moral decay so quickly? I wanted answers, so I met up with Dr. Judith Reisman, a world historian in the destruction of human sexuality. She's fought the pornography industry for decades and even won a lawsuit against Playboy.
I don't think pornography has always been such an epidemic cancer within our society like it is today.
No, not at all. We were, up to the end of the Second World War, a conservative Judeo-Christian nation. The turning point for all that was Dr. Alfred Kinsey, his book, Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, 1948. He was the father of the sexual revolution and therefore the father of everything that has come from that. And certainly one of the key things was pornography.
Dr. Alfred Kinsey ushered the destruction of our nation's moral code with his books, Sexual Behavior in the Human Male and Sexual Behavior in the Human Female, known as the Kinsey Reports. The world recognized him as the leading scientific expert on human sexuality. The reports claimed that humans were sexual from birth, and that what we deemed as immoral sexual behavior was actually normal, thus making it moral. What people to this day are not aware of were the methods he used to collect his data.
And I looked at the graphs that he provided, and I said, wait a minute, that's a 2-month-old baby. How does he know a 2-month-old baby did or did not have an orgasm? He also actually employed bona fide pedophiles to do what they did to children for his so-called data.
The research in Kinsey's books were partly based on the collection of data and confessions of a Nazi pedophile during World War II, Dr. Fritz von Balusek, who raped hundreds of children.
Now that became the foundation for the sex educational structure that fed itself into what we are teaching our children right now as we sit here and speak. And of course, it was the foundation of all the changes in our laws, the sodomy laws, the abortion laws, everything else. I mean, he's there. His handprints are on everything that deals with sexuality.
Essentially, what Kinsey did was he changed our belief about ourselves. This change of belief naturally changed our behavior. As a people, we would never be the same again. Ultimately, Kinsey's fraudulent data led to the legalization of pornography.
One of the virgins in college that read Kinsey and believed him was a guy named Hugh Hefner. He says, I will be, and I'm quoting him, Kinsey's pamphleteer. I will be Kinsey's pamphleteer.
Really?
So from there, he began to advocate for changes in the law, and he created a magazine called Playboy, which then he said would reflect what Kinsey had found. Just as Darwin was the father of legitimizing evolution, Kinsey was the father of legitimizing the sexual revolution and all that's based upon that today.
Sure enough, Hefner was true to his word. Not only did he popularize pornography on a global scale, he also helped to legalize it.
I want a congressional investigation of Kinsey. At some point, we may, in fact, be able to get a public to be aware that they've been raped. The whole nation has been raped. That is what's happened to us.
So, whatever happened to Kinsey? Well, this glorified psychopath eventually died of a slow and painful disease called orchitis, a lethal infection of the testicles due to years of brutal masochistic masturbation and other vile sexual acts. How ironic. The preacher of sexual liberation died from following his own message. Now, for any man who's trapped in pornography, you need to realize you've been duped. You've been suckered, because ultimately, Kinsey's purpose was to remake man into his image, which really wasn't a pretty one.
Why human sexuality? Because man was made in God's image. Satan wants to destroy the image of God in man. He wants us to not look like God in any shape, form, or fashion. He wants us to represent, in fact, his methods of selfishness. And so human sexuality becomes perverted and distorted, where we exploit each other.
And I believe God created our sexuality to be something that brings great joy. And yet man, of course, in the fall has perverted that. And ever since, it's been a battle. But whether it is something of beauty or something that degrades people, something that brings joy or something that brings bondage. And that's been the battle since time began. God created beauty to attract us to him. But the enemy uses the beauty, if you will, to try to attract us to things that take us away from God.
This is hell's master plan against men. This is what the enemy is using to destroy the culture of men. He's taking us down, and it's time to fight back.
See, as lower immorality leads to higher mortality. You see, all of sin promises to serve and to please, but only desires to dominate and destroy.
Maybe you're the guy sitting there and you never had an impure thought. Well, bless your heart. Because most guys have had an inappropriate thought. That happens. But this series can help you to get tools, whether you've never struggled, so that you help your brother.
Gentlemen, let's get one thing straight before we go any further. And that's the biblical definition of sexual purity. You've got Christian authors today that are saying masturbation's okay if you're single, if you're married, whatever. But you have to remember something. Your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. Therefore, any sexual activity outside of the marriage bed, doesn't matter if it's masturbation, oral sex, anal sex, fill in the blank, it's out of bounds, it's sin. Now, God is not uptight about our sexuality, but hell wants to take your desires and take them captive and turn them into a noose that he'll put around your soul. Well, how do guys get so tangled up? Well, let me tell you a stupid story from my youth when I was young and really stupid. I was in a naval training command, and I decided it'd be a great idea to go cave diving. I'd never done cave diving before, so I was kind of excited about it. It's a dangerous environment if you get turned around and get lost in there. And the instructor checked us. Good. Walked into the water, it's a natural springs. And we proceeded to the entrance of the cave, and it's just interesting because it's so dark and you don't know what's coming next. The instructor's guiding us along. Then he pointed to the ceiling, and it looked like there was a mirror in the ceiling, and actually what it was, all the escaped air bubbles from the scuba divers were collecting in the ceiling in kind of a dome-like structure. And he pointed up, and we went up above into the ceiling, into the air pocket, and it came up all the way to our chest, and there was plenty of air. So as we're swimming out of the cave, I'm thinking to myself, you know, I bet you I could swim free dive, and that means without a scuba tank, all the way back into that cave, find this air pocket, get a full breath of air, and come out. Now, if I can't find the air pocket, I got problems because I'm not going to get out. But I knew I could do it. It's called being young, stupid, and overloaded with testosterone. So we finished the dive, and everyone was having lunch, and I decided I would go try that out. So I took my swim fins and mask and strapped on my dive knife and headed back to the entrance of the cave without a scuba tank, just holding my breath.
Where are you going?
I'm just going for a quick swim.
Okay, right back. I have food.
So I finally find the air pocket. I realize it's smaller than I remember it to be, but I didn't think much about it until I went up to try to get some air, and I realized it had gone from this level down to only about 2 inches. And I put my nose right up against the ceiling of the cave because the air had seeped into the rock, and I sucked the last bit of air that I could out of the air pocket, which immediately collapsed it up, and now I had not a full breath of air to make it all the way back up. I'm struggling to get out of the cave. I'm starting to panic because my chest is hurting. I'm running out of air, and I'm running out of time. As I go past the exit to the cave, there's a rope tied to a log that identifies the entrance to the cave that goes to a buoy overhead. There was some excess rope attached to the log. As I went exploding past the log, somehow the rope wrapped around the dive knife that I had and created a noose. I thought, I'm dead because I just don't have so much air to survive. I figured if I pulled real hard, I'd be able to break that noose and get to the surface. But the harder I pulled, the worse it got. And I went into full-blown panic.
He's not here.
And I caught myself at the last minute. I would have died if I hadn't caught myself and said, pulling harder doesn't work. Down, pulled the knife out of my scabbard, got a hold of the rope and cut it so I could finally be free. And then I exploded to the surface before I passed out. How sweet it was to breathe air again.